Have you ever been in, say, a meeting or maybe just a social thing, and you meet someone who just seems to get people
Yeah.
instantly? It's like they have this natural gift, almost an instinct for figuring out what makes someone tick, like a superpower.
It really can look like a superpower, can it?
Hmm.
But, our sources are pretty clear. This isn't mystical at all. It's actually a very practical skill, something you learn. Think about how a seasoned clinical psychologist observes, or maybe an FBI agent in an interview. So our mission today really is to break down these models, these techniques from, psychology, observation, things that let you make a quick, accurate read on someone's character, their intentions. We're aiming to give you the tools to make, let's call them educated best guesses based on good data.
And the first big surprise, for me anyway, is realizing how little our actual words matter in all this. That 70% rule people quote, it's actually what, only 7% from the spoken words?
That's right, just 7%.
It's wild when you think about it. We focus so much energy on that tiny slice. It's like we're profoundly inefficient. Because the real story, the other 93%, that's in the body language, 55%, and the tone of voice, another 38%. We absolutely have to learn to read that other 93.
Exactly. And before we even get into how to read it, we need to tackle the biggest blocker, which honestly is probably you. Most people think they're pretty good judges of character, but confirmation bias is huge. We remember when we were right, forget when we were way off.
Right, you only count the hits.
Precisely. So if there's one critical thing to take away today, it's this. You must establish a person's normal behavior first, their baseline. Only then can you start interpreting signs. Context matters, culture matters, like eye contact. Too little in the US, may be deceptive. In Japan, it signals respect.
Okay, yeah. One sign isn't enough. You need the whole picture.
You need the 3 dimensions, always, never just one observation in isolation.
Okay, that makes sense. So observation is key for the what. But how do we figure out the why? What's driving the behavior underneath? What models help with that?
Well, for the deep stuff, we really need to start with Carl Jung, specifically his idea of the shadow. Jung saw the shadow as all the parts of ourselves we repress or disown, things we find unacceptable, like pettiness, maybe rage, fear, vanity. Intellectual insecurity is a big one. We bury it.
And burying it doesn't make it disappear, right? It still drives us.
Oh, absolutely. It drives behavior, often through what Jung called compensation. Think about someone who's just relentlessly self-critical, always tearing themselves down over tiny mistakes. Sometimes that's not about high standards. It's often the shadow compensating for this deep, hidden fear of failure they just won't admit, even to themselves.
Okay. But how do we know it's that and not just someone being, well, critical? How does it show up with other people?
That leads straight into shadow projection. It's when we unconsciously slap our own disowned traits onto other people. So you meet someone who's constantly calling anyone they disagree with lazy or stupid. It's pretty likely they're projecting their own deep fear of being seen as lazy or, not smart enough. It's like they see it everywhere but in the mirror. It protects the ego.
Ah, okay. And you also mentioned the inner child.
Yes. Look for the inner child. If you see an adult have a totally disproportionate emotional reaction, like a full-on meltdown because someone spilled coffee, that's a huge clue. It's like their inner child just got triggered and they're unconsciously forcing everyone else into the parent role to handle it. You have to ask, where is this really coming from?
Okay, so Jung gives us that psychic complexity. What about something simpler? Freud comes up in the sources too with the pleasure-pain principle. The breakdown seems pretty straightforward. Every single decision we make is either to gain pleasure or, and this is a stronger one, to avoid pain.
Exactly. Pain avoidance trumps pleasure because at its core, it's about survival. That instinct overrides almost everything else. And here's the really fascinating bit. It's not objective reality that drives us. It's our perception of pleasure or pain. The idea is what counts. The sources use that jalapeno grasshopper example. You avoid eating them, not because you know they taste bad, maybe you've never tried, but the idea of repulsion is powerful enough.
Right, the thought alone is enough to steer the behavior.
Yeah, and the time factor is critical too. We are wired to focus on immediate pleasure or pain, not long-term stuff. That's why someone might keep smoking despite knowing the health risks decades down the line. The immediate nicotine hit wins over the distant pain.
That focus on immediate needs seems to link up nicely with Maslow's hierarchy.
It does, perfectly. Maslow's pyramid is such a useful, practical tool here. It basically maps out how our motivations shift as we fulfill different levels of needs. Starting with basic physiological stuff, then safety, then love and belonging, self-esteem, and finally a self-actualization at the top.
And how does that help us read someone in the moment?
It's all about tailoring your communication. Think about the example from the notes the counselor at the women's shelter. Someone arrives fleeing violence. The counselor knows immediately their motivation is purely about safety and physiological needs. Food, shelter, security. Trying to talk about, I don't know, long-term career goals or self-discovery at that point, completely useless. Maybe even harmful.
Because they're not at that level on the pyramid yet.
Exactly. By understanding their current stage, the counselor focuses on providing security, which makes the communication effective right away.
Okay, so we have these deep drivers, shadow, pleasure, pain, needs. But then there's the ego, right, which the sources describe as this massive blocker to seeing things clearly.
Oh, absolutely. The defense of the ego. It's our built-in instinct to protect ourselves from feeling like a failure or ashamed or just plain wrong. And this often happens unconsciously. It leads to this kind of reality-bending, intellectual dishonesty, really.
And there are predictable ways it does this.
Very predictable. Two big ones are rationalization and denial. Rationalization is basically making excuses. The classic is Aesop's fable, the fox deciding the grapes he couldn't reach were probably sour anyway.
Or blaming the tools, right? My computer crashed, or my coworker sabotaged my report.
Exactly. It's always something external. It shifts the blame away from the self.
And if rationalization doesn't cut it, if the truth is just too painful.
Then you get denial. Just flat out refusing to accept a proven negative fact. The example of Fred, the pop star fan, is pretty stark. This guy built his whole identity around idolizing this star. When the star was convicted of serious crimes with overwhelming evidence, Fred just couldn't accept it. He insisted the star was innocent, called the victims jealous liars.
Wow. Because admitting the truth would mean his own judgment was flawed, his whole identity.
Precisely. His ego was so tied up in the worship, acknowledging the idol's guilt would have shattered his own self-image. He chose the lie over that psychic pain.
So the ego works overtime to hide the truth from our conscious mind. But what about the body? Does it play along with the lie? Or does it leak the truth?
It almost always leaks. The face is often the first place to look. Paul Ekman's work on microexpressions is key here. These are tiny, involuntary muscle contractions. They flash across the face, sometimes as fast as 1/30th of a second.
1/30th, wow.
Yeah, incredibly fast. And they're tied to those 6 universal emotions: happiness, sadness, disgust, anger, fear, surprise. They leak out, even when someone's trying hard to hide how they feel.
Are there any easy ones to spot, like reliable tells?
Well, the smile is a classic. A genuine smile, a Duchenne smile, reaches the eyes. You see the crinkling at the corners, the crow's feet. A fake smile, usually just the mouth muscles. Also, look for tension, maybe between the brows or around the eyes if someone's suppressing anger. Any slight asymmetry in an expression can also be a giveaway that it's being forced.
Okay, face covered. What about the rest of the body? Joe Navarro's work comes up a lot, body talk. Driven by the primitive brain.
That's right, the limbic system, our survival brain. It triggers those basic fight, flight, or freeze responses automatically when we feel threatened or stressed.
So you might see someone literally getting ready to bolt.
Subtly, yes.
Well,
Maybe locking their legs around the chair legs, like anchoring themselves. Or you might notice their feet constantly angling towards the nearest door, even if they're trying to seem engaged. That's the flight instincts leaking out.
and what about those self-soothing behaviors, pacifying behaviors?
Yes, pacifying behaviors. These are unconscious attempts to calm ourselves down when stressed. Super common.
Like what? Give us a few examples.
Okay, classic ones. Rubbing the back of the neck, it's a vulnerable area, so touching it is soothing. Or touching the throat, that little dip between the collarbones, the suprasternal notch. Squeezing it can be very calming. Also, things we call ventilating behaviors, pulling a shirt collar away from the neck, tossing hair back. It's like trying to physically release internal pressure.
But you said earlier, one sign isn't proof.
Absolutely crucial. Never forget the baseline. And look for clusters. A single neck rub could mean anything. But if you see neck rubbing, plus crossed arms, plus feet pointing to the exit, and this is different from how they normally act, then you've got some high-quality data suggesting discomfort or stress. It's the pattern, the cluster that matters.
Okay, so we gather this data, these clusters. Now, how do we use it? Especially when we suspect someone might not be telling the truth. The sources say just spotting lies is super hard.
It is. Statistically, most people are no better than chance, like flipping a coin. Forget the Hollywood idea of a single tell. Real success comes from strategic conversation and inquiry. The key technique is to increase the liar's cognitive load. Lying is mentally taxing. You have to invent a story, keep it consistent, and monitor the other person's reaction to see if they're buying it. It's hard work.
So you make their brain work harder, hoping they slip up. How do you do that?
Ask open-ended questions. Don't give them easy yes-no options. And crucially, withhold key information you might already know. Let them talk. Liars often have a detailed, rehearsed story ready to go right away, but they stumble when you ask unexpected, random questions about small details they didn't prepare for. What was the weather like then? Where exactly were you sitting?
What else should we look for?
Watch for vocal detachment, narrating something supposedly emotional with a flat tone. Truth tellers often show the struggle of recalling details. They might say, I'm not sure. Liars often try to fill every gap, sometimes too perfectly. Also, signs of cognitive stress like increased blinking, maybe pupil dilation.
Okay, shifting from deception to just understanding character quickly. What about thin slicing? Making fast, accurate judgments from small amounts of info.
Yes, thin slicing. It's our ability to make surprisingly accurate snap judgments. The
Okay.
Cotman example is famous predicting divorce with, 95% accuracy just by watching couples for a few minutes?
It sounds almost unbelievable, 95% in minutes.
It's powerful stuff. And apparently his accuracy decreased with more analysis time. Our trained intuition can be very effective. We can apply this by reading someone's environment. Like Sherlock Holmes reading a room. Possessions are extensions of personality.
Okay, so how do we read the room? What kind of artifacts should we look for?
The sources break it down into 3 types. First, identity claims. These are the obvious things. Awards on the wall, photos, posters, university degrees. They explicitly state how the person wants to be seen. Second, feeling regulators. These are more personal items that manage mood. Sentimental objects, maybe inspirational quotes, specific music choices, calming art. And third, arguably the most revealing, is behavioral residue. This is the unintentional stuff left behind by actions. Piles of unfinished projects, a super organized desk versus a chaotic one, the books they're actually reading, empty coffee cups. It shows their real habits.
Give me that office example again. A ward on the wall identity claim. But right next to it, piles of messy notes and maybe fast food wrappers, behavioral residue. What's the quick take?
The immediate working theory. They project an image of success and meticulousness, the award, but their actual day-to-day habits might be more impulsive, maybe disorganized, possibly struggling to keep up the residue. It highlights a potential gap between the desired self and the actual self.
Okay, that's insightful. And finally, we can use questions, but indirectly.
Exactly. Direct questions like, what are your core values? Often get you a polite, maybe rehearsed answer. Indirect questions bypass the filter. Try asking something like, if you were designing a character for a video game, what traits would you make sure they had? Their answer reveals their ideal self-image, what they admire or aspire to.
Oh, that's clever.
Or another one, if you suddenly had to donate $1 million to one charity, which one would it be and why? Forcing a choice reveals what issues they genuinely care about on a larger scale, beyond easy platitudes.
Right, it forces them off the standard script.
Okay.
Okay, so we've journeyed from deep motivations like the shadow, through ego defenses, reading nonverbal clusters, and using conversation strategically for detection and insight.
Yeah.
This really wasn't about learning mind-reading tricks, was it? It's about making observation a much more disciplined skill.
Precisely. And that discipline leads to the ultimate point. All these models, these techniques, they're just tools. Tools to gather better data, to form working theories about people. But the single biggest obstacle to using them well, it's failing to understand your own stuff, your own biases, your fears, your assumptions, your own shadow.
Which brings us to that final thought to leave everyone with.
Yes. To truly get good at analyzing others, you first have to accept something profound. Every single person you observe is, in a way, holding up a mirror.
Right.
They reflect back the unconscious baggage, the assumptions, the patterns you carry. Real self-knowledge isn't just helpful, it's the absolute foundation for understanding anyone else.